Okay, I guess we're going to have to do it this way. Good afternoon, football fans. Big Al here on this Wednesday, January 15th, 2025, and welcome to the first playoff edition of the week that was for the 2025 NFL playoffs, as this week we'll be taking a look at the individual and team statistical numbers from all 6 wildcard games from the opening week of the NFL playoffs. And we are not going to waste any time. So first off, I want to say like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell, get notified every time I go live. And big ups to all the people that are subscribed to me, that keep coming back to these videos. It's very, very appreciated. Okay, we're going to start off with the Houston Texans defeating the Los Angeles Chargers by a final score of 32-12. As for the second year in a row, the Texans will advance into the divisional round of the playoffs, and once again the Chargers are sent home packing one and done for them. We'll begin with individual numbers first for the Houston Texans. Okay game for C.J. Stroud, not the best though. 22 of 33, 282 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a 90.7 QB rating. Joe Mixon had a pretty good day. He had 25 carries for 106 yards and a touchdown, and 1 catch for 13 yards on 2 targets. C.J. Stroud added 6 carries for 42 yards. And for the receivers, Nico Collins had 7 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. Xavier Hutchinson, 1 for 34 on his only target of the game. John Mechie, 4 for 28 yards on 8 targets. Cade Stover, 4 for 28 yards on 4 targets. Dalton Schultz, 2 catches, 23 yards on 4 targets. And Robert Woods had 2 catches for 22 yards, also on 4 targets. Kaimi Fairbairn was 3 for 3 on field goals, long attempt 41, and 3 for 3 on extra points. Tommy Townsend with 4 punts, averaging 45.8, long punt of 67, with a touchback and a punt inside the 20-yard line. Alright, on defense, you got Eric Murray. He had a pretty good game. 7 tackles, 1 pass defense, and an interception return for a touchdown. Derek Stingley Jr. had 4 solo tackles, a forced fumble, 5 passes defense, that's right, I said 5, and 2 interceptions. Azeez Al-Shaair had 6 tackles. Henry To'oTo'o also had 6 tackles. Will Anderson, 3 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 2 passes defense. Danielle Hunter had 3 tackles. And Miles Bryant had 3 tackles and a pass defense. Kamari Lassiter had 2 tackles, 2 passes defense, and an interception. And Mario Edwards Jr. finished with 2 tackles and 1.5 sacks. Danico Autry also had a sack for the Texans. For the Los Angeles Chargers, it was a bad day for Justin Herbert. 14 of 32 for 242 with 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions. He had a QB rating of 40.9. J.K. Dobbins led the way for the LA ground attack, just 9 carries, 26 yards. That's 2.9 per rush. Gus Edwards, not much better, 7 for 22 at 3.1 per rush. And Jelly is up in here. What's up, Jelly? Lab McConkey will get my Offensive Player of the Week honors, as he went off in this game despite the loss. 9 catches for 197 yards and a touchdown on 14 targets. He averaged nearly 22 yards per catch. Only other receiver that deserves some recognition is Will Dissly with 2 catches, 16 yards on 5 targets. Cameron Dicker was 2 for 2 on field goals, long 39, 0 for 1 on extra points. J.K. Scott, 5 punts, averaging 44.2, long punt of 55, with 2 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for LA include Dayon Henley, 10 tackles in the game. Troy Dye had 8 tackles and a pass defense. Derwin James had 7 tackles and a pass defense. Aloy Gilman, he finishes with 10 tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Oh, I am from Grand Rapids, Michigan originally, but now I live in Phoenix, Arizona. So yep, that's where I am right now, and that's where I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan originally, and now I live in Phoenix, Arizona. So thanks for the question there, Jelly. Junior Colston, 4 tackles. Tarheeb Still had 3 solo tackles. Likewise for Puna Ford and Christian Fulton. Total yards were 429 for the Texans and 261 for the Chargers. Passing yards favored the Texans, 261 to 211. Rush yards also favored the Texans, 168 to 50. Houston had 20 first downs versus LA's 15. The Chargers were 3 of 11 on third down, 0 for 1 on fourth down, while the Texans were 5 for 14 on third down and 2 for 2 on fourth down. 2 penalties, 10 yards for the Chargers, 4 sacks taken for 31, with no lost fumbles, 4 interceptions, which hurts, and 5 punts. At 8 penalties, 86 yards for the Texans, 3 sacks taken for 21, 2 lost fumbles, 1 interception, and 4 punts. Closing line was LA minus 2.5, and the over-under was 42. I did take the Chargers to win and to cover, so I lost both those picks as I start the playoffs 0-1 both ways. On Saturday night, the Baltimore Ravens defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers for the second time in about a month as they advanced to the divisional round with a 28-14 victory over their hated arch rivals. We'll begin with individual numbers first for the Ravens. Lamar Jackson was 16 of 21 for 175 yards with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions and a 132 QB rating. Derrick Henry, the King, ran all over this Steelers front 7 for 26 carries, 186 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson did a little running himself. He had 15 carries for 81 yards, averaging 5.4 per rush, while King Henry averaged 7.2. Leading receivers for the Ravens include Isaiah Likely, 3 catches, 53 yards on 4 targets. Mark Andrews, 2 for 27 on 3 targets. Nelson Aguilar, 1 catch, 25 yards and 1 target. Rashad Bateman, 2 for 24 and a touchdown on 2 targets. Tylan Wallace, 1 for 21 on 2 targets. Justice Hill, 4 for 13 and a touchdown on 4 targets. And Anthony Miller finished with 3 catches, 12 yards on 3 targets. Justin Tucker had no field goals, but was 4 for 4 on extra points. Jordan Stout finished the night with 4 punts, averaging 45.8, long punt of 49 with a touchback and a punt inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Ravens include Ardarius Washington with 7 targets, or rather 7 tackles, I should say. Roquan Smith had 5 tackles. Nnamdi Madubuike had 4 tackles, 2 sacks, and a pass defense. Hey, it's Chad. What's up, Chad? How you doing? All right, Malik Harrison had 4 tackles, as did Marlon Humphrey. Odafe Owe had 2 solo tackles and a sack. Michael Pierce, I think. Yep, Michael Pierce also had a sack in this game. And Brandon Stevens had 4 total tackles for the Ravens. Over on the Steelers side of things, Russell Wilson was 20 of 29 for 270 with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions and a 121.3 QB rating. Justin Fields attempted a pass and finished with a 39.6 passer rating. Not much to speak about with Pittsburgh's ground game, led by Najee Harris, just 6 carries, 17 yards at 2.8 per run. Leading receivers for Pittsburgh include George Pickens, 5 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. Najee Harris, 3 for 41 on 3 targets. Sorry about that, guys. Van Jefferson, 2 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown on 2 targets. Jalen Warren, 4 grabs, 19 yards on 5 targets. And Pat Freiermuth, 3 for 15 on 4 targets. What's up, Snowman? Alright, Chris Boswell, no field goals, but 2 for 2 on extra points. Corliss Waitman had 5 punts, averaging 51.4, long punt of 60, and all 5 of his punts ended up inside the 20-yard line, so good day for Corliss Waitman. Leading tacklers for the Steelers include Landon Roberts. He had 14 total tackles. Joey Porter Jr. had 6 solo tackles and a pass defense. Minka Fitzpatrick finished with 9 tackles. Deshaun Elliott, 5 solo tackles and a pass defense. Patrick Queen, the former Raven, had 10 total tackles. Cam Hayward also had 10 total tackles. And Peyton Wilson had 6 tackles for the Steelers. Total yards, 464 for Baltimore, 280 for Pittsburgh. Passing yards favored the Steelers, 251 to 165. Rush yards favored the Steelers, or rather the Ravens, 299 to 29. And the 299 rush yards are the most allowed by the Steelers in a playoff game ever. The Ravens had 29 first downs versus 11 for Pittsburgh. The Steelers were 5 of 11 on 3rd down, 0 for 1 on 4th down. The Ravens were awesome on 3rd down, going 10 for 15 with no 4th downs. 7 penalties, 41 yards for the Steelers, 4 sacks taken for 19, with no lost fumbles or interceptions, plus 5 punts. 3 penalties, 14 yards for the Ravens, 1 sack taken for 10, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 4 punts. Time of possession, 39 minutes and 33 seconds for the Ravens, and 20 minutes, 27 seconds for the Steelers. Closing line was Baltimore minus 9.5, and the over-under was 45, and they nearly got there. Just another field goal would have done it. I took Baltimore to win, but Pittsburgh to cover, so that's my first playoff win of the season, 1-1, versus an 0-2 ATS record. Oh, and I didn't mention the time of possession in the Texans-Chargers game. Let me put that up for you. 34 minutes, 25 seconds for the Texans, and 25 minutes, 35 seconds for the Chargers. Moving to Sunday, it starts off with the Buffalo Bills beating up the Denver Broncos 31-7. So the Bills advance to the divisional round, and the Broncos are 1-done. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Bills, starting with Josh Allen. Effective game for him, 20 of 26, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 135.4 QB rating. James Cook did the bulk of the work for the ground game, 23 carries, 120, and a touchdown, averaging 5.2 per run. Josh Allen added 8 carries, 46 yards at a 5.8 clip. And Ty Johnson had 9 carries, 44 yards, averaging nearly 5 per run. Leading receivers for the Bills include Curtis Samuel, 3 for 68 and a touchdown on 3 targets. Khalil Shakir, 6 for 61 yards on 6 targets. Dalton Kincaid, 3 for 47 on 3 targets. Dawson Knox, 2 for 38 on 3 targets. Ty Johnson, 2 catches, 26 yards, and a touchdown on 2 targets. And Amari Cooper, he had a pretty silent game, 2 catches, 8 yards on 3 targets. Tyler Bass was perfect in the kicking game, 3 for 3 on field goals, long 34, and 2 for 2 on extra points. Only 1 punt for Sam Martin for 45 yards, and it went inside the 20-yard line. So, pretty light day for Mr. Martin. Leading tacklers for the Bills include Terrell Bernard with 6 tackles. Matt Milano, 5 tackles and a sack. Teron Johnson had 5 tackles. Christian Benford had 4 tackles. Rasul Douglas, 3 tackles. Austin Johnson, 2 solo tackles. Greg Rousseau with 2 solo tackles and a sack. And DeMar Hamlin with 4 total tackles. On the Broncos side, Bo Nix went 13 of 22 for 144 yards, 1 touchdown, which was early in the game, and no interceptions with a 93.8 QB rating. Riley Dixon, this is the punter. He completed a pass for 15 yards and a 118.8 QB rating. Bo Nix was also Denver's leading rusher with 4 carries, 43 yards at almost 11 per run. And Javonte Williams didn't do quite as much, 7 carries, 29 yards at 4.1 per run. Leading receivers for the Broncos include Courtland Sutton, 5 catches, 75 yards, that's 15 per catch, on 9 targets. Troy Franklin, 2 catches, 54 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets. Javonte Williams had 2 catches, 14 yards on 2 targets. And Marvin Mims Jr. with 2 catches, 12 yards on 4 targets. Will Lutz was 0 for 1 on field goals, 1 for 1 on extra points. Riley Dixon, 4 punts, averaging 48, long punt of 53, 2 punts inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Broncos include P.J. Locke with 10 total tackles. D.J. Jones had 7 total tackles and a sack. Brandon Jones, no relation to D.J. Jones, he had 7 tackles as well. Riley Moss finishes with 7 tackles and a pass defense. Pat Surtain II, 5 tackles. Justin Sternad, 5 tackles. Zach Allen, 5 tackles plus a sack. Dondrea Tillman, 7 tackles. And Cody Barton finished the day with 8 tackles. Total yards were 471 for the Bills and 224 for the Broncos. Passing yards favored Buffalo, 261 to 145. Rush yards also favored Buffalo, 210 to 79. The Bills had 26 first downs. The Broncos have half of those, 13. The Broncos finished 2 of 9 on 3rd down, 1 of 3 on 4th down, which is not good. The Bills were 8 of 15 on 3rd down and 2 for 2 on 4th down. 3 penalties, 27 yards for the Broncos, 2 sacks taken for 14, with no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 4 punts. 7 penalties, 45 yards for the Bills, 2 sacks taken for 11, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 1 punt. Time of possession, Bills clearly into ball hawk territory at 41 minutes 43 seconds, while the Broncos had the ball for a measly 18 minutes and 17 seconds. Closing line was Buffalo minus 7.5, and the over-under is 49. I took the Bills both ways, and I end up winning both picks, as I am now 2-1 in the wild card round straight up, and 1-2 with my spread picks. The Sunday afternoon game saw the Philadelphia Eagles advance to the divisional round of the playoffs, eliminating the Green Bay Packers 22-10. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Eagles first. Jalen Hurts, 13 of 21 for 131 with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions and a 111.4 QB rating, plus 6 carries, 36 yards. Saquon Barkley finished the day with 25 carries for 119, averaging 4.8 per run. And he had 2 catches for 4 yards on 2 targets. Only other receivers we'll be talking about are Devontae Smith, 4 for 55 yards on 4 targets. Dallas Goedert, 4 for 47 and a touchdown on 6 targets. Jahan Dotson, 1 for 11 and a touchdown on 2 targets. Meanwhile, A.J. Brown had just 1 catch for 10 yards on 3 targets. You figure they'll use them more in the divisional round next week. Jake Elliott, 3 for 3 on field goals, long 32, and 1 for 2 on extra points. Braden Mann, 5 punts, averaging 48.6, long punt of 63, 1 touchback, and 2 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for Philly include Reed Blankenship, 11 tackles and a forced fumble. Quinyon Mitchell, the rookie, had 6 solo tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Nolan Smith, wrecking crew here, 8 tackles, 2 sacks. Zach Bond, 8 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Oren Burks, he came in after Nakobe Dean injured his knee and was declared out for the playoffs. He had 5 tackles and a forced fumble. The aforementioned Dean had 6 tackles before being injured. Cooper DeJean, 4 tackles. Darius Big Play Slay, 3 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception for the Eagles. For the Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love, rough game. 20 of 33, 212 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a 41.5 QB rating. Josh Jacobs averaged 4.5 yards per run with 18 carries, 81 yards, and a touchdown. Jaden Reed led the Packers receivers with 4 catches, 46 yards on 4 targets. Josh Jacobs added another 3 receptions for 40 on 3 targets. Dontavian Wicks, 2 catches, 39 yards on 6 targets. And Tucker Kraft, 5 catches, 26 yards on 5 targets. Brandon McManus, 1 for 2 on field goals as long as 26, and 1 for 1 on extra points. And by the way, this is the first missed field goal in the playoffs in the career of Brandon McManus. Daniel Whelan, 2 punts averaging 50, and both went for 50 yards. Leading tacklers for the Packers include Quay Walker with 8 tackles. He did get injured in this game. In fact, a lot of Packer players got injured in this game. Carrington Valentine, 5 tackles. Isaiah McDuffie, Isaiah McDuffie had 8 tackles and half a sack. Adrian Cooper with 6 tackles. Xavier McKinney 5 tackles. Kenny Clark also had 5 tackles. Kingsley Egnagbare, I hope I got his name right. Either way, he had 4 tackles. Evan Williams had 4 tackles as well, plus a pass defense. Javon Bullard finished with 3 tackles. TJ Slayton also had 3 tackles. And Lucas Van Ness had 4 tackles. Rashawn Gary added 3 tackles and a sack for the Packers. Total yards were 302 for the Packers and 290 for the Eagles. Passing yards favored Green Bay, 195 to 121. Rush yards favored Philadelphia, 169-107. 17 first downs for the Packers, 16 for the Eagles. Green Bay finished 7 of 13 on third down and 1 for 2 on fourth down, while Philly was terrible on third down, finishing 2 of 11 and 1 for 1 on fourth down. 8 penalties, 85 yards for the Packers, 2 sacks taken for 17, 1 lost fumble, 3 interceptions, and 2 punts. 7 penalties, 64 yards for the Eagles, 2 sacks taken for 10, no lost fumbles or interceptions, and 5 punts. Time of possession is 30 minutes, 33 seconds for the Eagles, 29 minutes, 27 seconds for the Packers. Closing line was Philadelphia minus 5.5, over under is 46. I took the Eagles to win and to cover, and I won both picks. So that makes me 3-1 in the wild card round straight up, and 2-2 spread wise. Sunday wrapped up with easily the best game of the wild card round, and that was the Washington Commanders with an overtime field goal to upset the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 23-20. And this is Washington's first playoff win since 2005. So it was a long time coming for the Commanders. So Washington advances and Tampa Bay goes home. We'll start with individual numbers first for the Commanders. Jaden Daniels, really good. 24 of 35, 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, a 110.2 QB rating, and he did have a cut underneath his eye early in this one. Okay, rushing numbers, not much to write home about. Jaden Daniels, 13 for 36 at 2.8 per run. Austin Eckler, 8 for 27 at 3.4 per run. And Brian Robinson Jr., 10 for 16 at just 1.6 per run. Alright, Scary Terry McLaurin led Washington's receivers. 7 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown on 10 targets. That's 12.7 per catch. De'Ami Brown, 5 for 89 yards and a touchdown on 5 targets, averaging a team-high 17.8 yards per reception. Austin Eckler, 3 catches, 26 yards on 4 targets. Zach Ertz, 2 for 23 on 4 targets. Brian Robinson, 4 for 22 on 5 targets. And Olamide Zaccheaus, 3 catches, 19 yards on 3 targets. Zane Gonzalez, 3 for 3 on field goals, long 52, 2 for 2 on extra points, and there were no punts for the Commanders. Leading tacklers include the ageless Bobby Wagner with 8 tackles and half a sack. Jeremy Chinn had 8 tackles as well. Marshawn Lattimore, who was matched up against McLaurin, he had 7 tackles. Frankie Louvu, 4 tackles. And Quan Martin, rather, he had 4 tackles as well. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield was very efficient. 15 of 18 for 185 yards with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions and a QB rating of 146.5. He also added 7 carries for 23 yards at a 3.3 per yard clip. Bucky Irving had a good game, 17 carries, 77 yards at 4.5 per run. He also had 2 catches for 6 yards and a touchdown on 2 targets. Mike Evans, 7 catches, 92 yards, a touchdown on 7 targets. Led the Tampa Bay receivers. What's up, Crazy Cajun? How you doing, bro? Jalen McMillan finished with 2 catches, 41 yards on 4 targets. Cade Otton, 2 for 32 on 2 targets. And Rashad White, who didn't run the ball all that much, had 2 catches, 14 yards on 2 targets. Chase McLaughlin, 2 for 2 on field goals, long 50, and 2 for 2 on extra points. Jack Browning, 2 punts averaging 48.5 yards, long punt 56 with 1 inside the 20. Leading tacklers for the Commanders include Tyke Smith and Logan Hall, each with 7 tackles apiece. Antoine Winfield Jr. had 8 tackles. He led the team along with Levante David. He had 8 tackles and a sack. And I said the Commanders when I meant to say the Buccaneers. Sorry about that. Greg Gaines, 6 tackles. KJ Britt, 5 tackles. Jamil Dean, 4 tackles and a pass defense. Mike Edwards also had 4 total tackles. Yaya Diaby, likewise, he had 4 tackles. And Zion McCullen had 3 tackles and a pass defense. Total yards, Washington 350, Tampa 284. Passing yards favored Washington 268 to 183. Rush yards favored Tampa 101 to 82. The Commanders finished with 22 first downs versus just 19 for the Bucs. Both teams did very well on third down. Washington was 8 of 15, while Tampa Bay was 5 for 9. The Commanders were also 3 of 5 on fourth down. 5 penalties, 39 yards for the Commanders. 1 sack taken for no loss. 0 lost fumbles. 0 interceptions. And as I mentioned, no punts. 7 penalties, 65 yards for the Buccaneers. 1 sack taken for only 2 yards. 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, and 2 punts. So not a lot of punting going on in this game. The Commanders wound up in ball hawk territory, losing my words here. They had the ball for 35 minutes, 26 seconds, while the Buccaneers just 24 minutes and 34 seconds. Just got home from league. How'd you do? Closing line was Tampa Bay -3 and the over-under was 51.5. I did pick the Bucs to win and cover. Lost both picks. So that makes me 3-2 straight up in the wild card round and 2-3 versus the spread. Oops. My mistake there. And the final game was on Monday night, and it really wasn't much of one, as the Los Angeles Rams dominated the Minnesota Vikings 27-9. 6-19 series. Yeah, that's an okay series. Alright, so the Rams advanced to the divisional round, and the Vikings, despite their 14-3 regular season record, they are 1-done. We'll start with individual numbers for the Rams first. Matthew Stafford, 19 of 27, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 117.7 QB rating. Kyren Williams was the lone bright spot on this LA ground attack. 76 yards on 16 carries at 4.8 per run. As for the receivers, Tyler Higbee had 5 catches, 58 yards on 5 targets. He had a chest injury in this game, but is expected to play against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday, according to Rams coach Sean McVay. Puka Nacua, 5 catches, 44 yards on 9 targets. Only 1 catch for Cooper Kupp for 29 yards on his only target. Kyren Williams and Davis Allen each had touchdown receptions for LA. Joshua Carty, 2 for 2 on field goals, long 44, 3 for 3 on extra points. And Ethan Evans, he finishes with 5 punts, averaging 50.2, long punt of 59 with 1 touchback and 3 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Rams include Quentin Lake, he had 9 tackles. Christian Roseboom had 7 tackles. Cameron Kitchens had 6 tackles. Cameron Curl had 4 tackles. Byron Young, 4 tackles and 1.5 sacks. Omar Spates, 4 tackles. Akila Witherspoon, 3 solo tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. I'll get to him in just a second. Jalen McCullough had 6 tackles. Neville Gallimore had 5 tackles and 1.5 sacks. Darius Williams, he finishes with 4 tackles. Kobe Turner had 4 tackles and 2 sacks. And Michael Holt, there we go, he had 4 tackles and half a sack. For the Vikings, Sam Darnold, one of his worst games this year by far. 25 of 40 for 245 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a 77.6 passer rating. He just looked a little discombobulated out there on Monday night. Darnold added 4 carries, 19 yards at a 4.8 average. Aaron Jones, 13 for 48, averaging 3.7. And former Ram Cam Akers, 5 for 39 yards at 7.8 per run. Leading receivers for Minnesota include TJ Hawkinson, 5 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown, 12.8 per catch on 5 targets. Justin Jefferson, 5 catches, 58 yards, 11.6 per grab on 8 targets. Jalen Naylor, 3 for 33 on 5 targets. Jordan Addison, 3 for 29 on 8 targets. Johnny Munt, 2 for 28 on 3 targets. And Aaron Jones, 3 catches, 12 yards on 6 targets. Will Reichard, 1 for 1 on field goals, long 34, no extra points. Ryan Wright, 3 punts, averaging 44.3, long punt of 56 with 1 touchback. Leading tacklers for the Vikings include Ivan Pace Jr., who led the team. Well, he was actually second on the team with 10 total tackles. Blake Cashman led the team with 11 tackles. He also had a sack. Harrison Smith had 9 tackles and a pass defense. Meanwhile, Byron Murphy Jr., Jonathan Grenard, and Josh Metellus each had 3 tackles apiece. Andrew Van Ginkel also had 3 tackles plus a sack. Cam Bynum 3 tackles, and Stephon Gilmore with 2 tackles and a pass defense. Total yards for 292 for the Rams, 269 for the Vikings, so neither team had 300 yards of offense in this game. Passing yards favored the Rams, 202 to 163, while rush yards favored Minnesota, 106 to 90. The Vikings had 20 first downs, the Rams just 16. 6 of 17 third downs for the Vikings and 1 for 4 on fourth down. 2 for 10 third downs for the Rams with no fourth downs. 2 penalties, 20 yards for Minnesota. How about 9 sacks taken for 82 yards? That's about 9 per sack. 1 lost fumble, 1 interception, and 3 punts. And 10 penalties, 95 yards for the LA Rams. 2 sacks taken for 7, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 5 punts. Time of possession favored Minnesota in the loss at 32 minutes, 18 seconds. The Rams had the ball for 27 minutes and 42 seconds. Closing line was Minnesota minus 2.5, and the over-under was 47.5. I took the Rams straight up and against the spread, and I finished Wild Card Weekend with a 4-2 straight up record and a 3-3 spread record. So overall, outside of say the Commanders-Buccaneers game, this was not a good weekend of football based on the eye test. You had a combined margin of 85 points across the 6 games. That's about a margin of victory of 14.2 points. And if you look, only 3 teams went over 400 yards of offense in this game, or this weekend. Not just this game, but all the games. And likewise, half of the wild card teams had less than 300 yards, and that includes my Eagles, who had 290. Hopefully, the divisional round will bring us some much better action on the field than this weekend did. And speaking of the divisional round, here is the schedule coming up. All right, you got the Houston Texans visiting the Kansas City Chiefs. That'll start the day on Saturday, 4:30 Eastern. That will be seen on ESPN and on ABC. And then the night game on Saturday has the Washington Commanders at the Detroit Lions at 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. On Sunday, the Los Angeles Rams visit the Philadelphia Eagles in a rematch of their Week 12 game. And that's at 3 p.m. Eastern on NBC. And the final game of the divisional round is a pretty big one, as the Baltimore Ravens visit the Buffalo Bills at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS. So there you have it. The Super Wild Card edition of the week that was, as we looked at all the individual and team numbers from every wild card game from this past week. We'll be back tomorrow with a look at the divisional round picks, both straight up and against the spread. I'm hoping for a 4-0 week, but hey, that's wishful thinking, right? So we'll see how we do tomorrow and this weekend. Thank you, Crazy Cajun. Glad you enjoyed it. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel like Crazy Cajun did. And ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out.